Hi, Scouts. Thank you so much for joining. We're really excited to be here with you. My name is Yasmin, and this is Stephen, and we're going to be hosting today's webinar. So, we're from an organization called Million Peacemakers, where we empower leaders like yourself all around the world to find freedom from conflict and introduce peacemaking to their communities by using the Nonflict way. So, I've been
Actually, before
involved.
we begin, Yasmin, I see people are just logging on right now. So we're going to ask you
Okay,
to start it over again in about a second or two. In the
sure.
meantime, when we have people use the chat to just type in where are you dialing in from?
Sure.
Because I see people are just logging in. There were some issues with the website being overloaded. So let's give people a second or two to come in. And if you want to use the chat, where are you dialing in from? Yasmin, you're in Montreal. Cool. I'm just north of Montreal. He moves in. Hello. We want this to be really interactive. Hi Manon from France. Bienvenue de France. Maldives. Great. Hi you from Singapore. We have a friend from Morocco.
I love it. We have people from everywhere.
Yeah, super. All right, we're just going to give it another second. I think we're good. I'm from Saudi Arabia, Philippines. I was there a few years ago. Love the Philippines. Malaysia. Super. Okay, Yasmin, start.
So, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining, especially people who, we know there's a big time difference right now. We really appreciate you guys being here. We're really excited to be with you. Like I said, my name's Yasmin, and this is Stephen, and we're going to be hosting today's webinar. So, we're from an organization called Million Peacemakers, where we empower people and leaders like yourself all around the world to find freedom from conflict and to introduce peacemaking to their communities by using the Nonflict way. So I've been involved for almost 3 years now. I'm on the youth team and I help facilitate the workshops. I host some here in Montreal, where I'm based, and I also help train our youth coaches. So the reason that I had got involved kind of has to do with my background. So I'm originally Lebanese and I grew up in the Middle East. And, I've seen a lot of conflict in the area. So growing up, I've always, hoped that one day I could make an impact. And, that's how I ended up being here. But Stephen's been here for way longer than I have since right at the very beginning. So Stephen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Steve. I'm also from Montreal originally and do live north of Montreal right now in Canada. And we started Million Peacemakers 10 years ago. So it's our 10th anniversary this year. Really honored to be with you, to have the Scouts with us today as one of the partnerships. You know the SDGs. SDG 17 is partnership, and that's how we are growing. And that's a little bit about me. I'm a father of four, stepfather of three, happily married to my wife, Naomi, and grandfather of two as well.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for sharing. So, for today, we're going to be doing a few polls so we can interact with each other, and we're going to be using Slido. If you guys haven't used it before, you can open it on the web, like on Safari or Explore on your PC or on your phone. It should work fine. And you can join using our room number, which you can see on the screen. I'll give you guys a few minutes to do that.
Yeah. Or if you have a smartphone, you could just scan the QR code with your camera app. It'll
Yeah.
go right into that. In the meantime, we have people from all over the place, a lot from Indonesia, Philippines, Egypt. We have some great leaders in each of these areas, actually, youth leaders. Super. And why don't we open up our first question on Slido?
Sure. Um, so for today, we're going to be talking about conflict. So using Slido, can you guys tell us maybe in one word, how does conflict make you feel? We also have a feelings wheel. If you would like to get inspired. For me, I know conflict always makes me feel so irritated and anxious. Sometimes it can make me feel lonely, or like feel alone in my thoughts. So I'd love to hear from you guys. How does conflict make you feel?
In one word, hopefully the Slido is working. Let me know in the chat if there's a problem with it. It's actually my first time using Slido. So hopefully we'll figure it out. The challenge code will be coming later. Right at the end, you'll get you the challenge code. Don't worry about that. You'll get your badge. Is Slido working for everyone? Let's see if we have anyone who's put it into the Slido.
So if you guys move from this slide, it will stop the slider. So I suggest you keep it on this slide for the big. So back to the previous one. Now it's off again here. So keep it here so that
Keep
they
it
can.
here. Okay, very good. Three typing. Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Janine from the Scouts, who's giving me my first tutorial on Slido. Thank you. So there we go. Now we're getting it.
As you guys are inputting these, we just wanted to let you know that you can put throughout this webinar, you can put your questions in the chat and we'll have a Q&A session at the end and we'll address all your questions.
Thanks, Yasmin. So the biggest word so far is bad, sad, helpless.
Helpless,
Yeah,
fearful. All of these are very valid.
great. And if you don't have Slido yet, feel free if you couldn't use Slido to put your feelings into the chat, which we have as well. Okay, so anger is there.
Fearful.
Yeah,
Love.
comfortable.
That's a new one.
Yeah, I haven't. And no, it's super interesting because some people do associate conflict with with what they have growing up. So if conflict is part of your upbringing, then you might associate conflict with love, and
Yeah.
maybe it's dealt with in a loving way. So who knows? Very interesting, guys. What's your Facebook names, and let's make a GC. We'll share our social media at the end. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. That was great. Thank you all for sharing.
As you guys could tell, conflict can certainly bring up a lot of emotions, maybe love, maybe fear, maybe loneliness. Um, Either way, all these emotions is what makes it hard to diffuse a situation sometimes. But the magic here is, which most of the time we're missing, is that you can use these conflicts to grow, to change, to make a positive impact in your life. And that's why we're here today, because we want to share the tools with you to do that. Um, and this is also because resolving conflicts, it doesn't just make you a better scout, it makes you a better friend, a better sibling, maybe a better son or daughter. And no matter how old you are, this is what we have in common. All of us deal with conflict. So before we share our tools, again, using Slido, can you guys tell us what does conflict mean to you?
You had to define conflict in a few words. How would you define it?
Fighting with each other, different opinions,
Aggression.
definitely that could be a part of it. So a lot of you guys are saying fighting, arguing, maybe ignorance, difference of opinions. So as you guys can tell, there is even conflict when trying to find the definition of conflict. Here at Million Peacemakers, we define conflict as two or more perspectives that come into contact with each other. So, the most common example is the glass half empty or is the glass half full. And here, by definition, conflict isn't positive or negative. It's just how you use it that and deal with it that makes it constructive or destructive. And the key here, again, is to really look at the conflict as an opportunity to grow as an individual in society, maybe at work, because learning how to deal with them constructively, this really is going to be your superpower and it's going to drive change in the world. A lot of the times we think that peacemaking has to be something that's in the future or like maybe changing the world. It's not like an easy thing to do. It's not something you can do right now, but it's not true because you can start here where you are. Again, we all have conflict at home, at school, with friends and family. So at Million Peacemakers, we introduce this art of everyday peacemaking using the Nonflict way. Stephen, I think you're the perfect person to tell us a bit more about it.
All right. Well, thanks, Yasmin. So Nonflict, actually, the word Nonflict came from my stepson, a brainstorming session, because there was no word for a resolved conflict. So we wanted to come up with a model that would be really simple. And I found for this group, I'm in a group called YPO, which is kind of like Scouts, but for CEOs. I joined it. It stands for Young Present Organization. I joined it when I was young. I was a 30-year-old CEO. And I found that with the skills in negotiation that I'd used with my employees, with my family, did not work well for long-term relationships. You might win short-term, but long-term, it didn't end up very well, I found. And I got agreement from our chapters across Canada, 17 chapters, which are like troops, only for CEOs, to do an event on conflict resolution. And I figured I'd get an expert to do it. But I found that the literature out there were typically by PhDs for other PhDs. And I have the books behind me. I would spend my nights and weekend reading it. And they're great, but none of us are going to read a 980-page handbook when we have a conflict. So I realized I would have to create the event myself. And I met Dr. Amir Kafir, who had worked with our members in conflict zones. And he agreed to facilitate the event. And we put together a team of academics and practitioners with the goal of coming up with a model that could be so powerful, it could work for any conflict, and so simple it fits on the back of my business card. And these are the questions of Nonflict, you'll get them. And since then, we've shared it with people around the world, and it combines theories and studies that are already out there. We didn't reinvent the wheel, we just simplified the wheel. And since then, we've trained about 2.3 million people in 10 years with the focus on youth. And most of it, by the way, has been this year through other partnerships. Up until this year, it was about 230,000 people. So this has been a big year for us. And the partnerships have included people around the world. I've been invited to the Vatican twice. There you have the Cardinal Turkson in charge of peace, where I was invited to speak at an event on religion and the SDGs, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which I know the Scouts are very involved with, because they felt there was conflict in achieving any of these goals, from gender equality to climate action. And they agreed that Nonflict could be practical and useful for the religious leaders and UN leaders on achieving these SDGs. Another partnership has been with Junior Achievement, which has 17 million youth around the world. And there on the right of that picture, I'm at a classroom in Slovakia this weekend doing a Nonflict workshop for students from Junior Achievement. Another collaboration is Sport is Your Gang, bottom left, which work with youth in conflict zones in Central Latin America, where they learn Muay Thai boxing to help them feel empowered. And the Muay Thai boxing coaches are trained in Nonflict to use when they're after their workout and they deal with conflicts in school, on the street, or at home. Bottom right is a YMCA. We did work with them and we won the YMCA Peace Medal. And in the middle, I'm at a reconciliation village in Rwanda, where it's now the 30th anniversary of the genocide against the Tutsis, where 1 million Tutsis were killed in 100 days, 30 years ago. And in this village, victims and perpetrators of the genocide live together. And there's a peace initiative, and now they're embracing Nonflict to be one of the key tools with them. And one of the tools we'll introduce you to later speaks their language, Kinyarwanda, and they found it super helpful. And because of the anniversary, we created a partnership with the government of Rwanda to train 1 million youth around the world in their memory. And there you see on the left side, Freddie, who represents the Kigali Genocide Memorial, the YPO Peace Action Network Chair, Shirin, and a representative of the government next to me.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for sharing. So, here at Million Peacemakers, we have a very big emphasis and focus on youth and putting them at the center of what we do because, like I said earlier, you're the future leaders and the next generation. And we really want to emphasize that the power of listening can go a very long way. As someone who's part of the youth group, it's been very empowering for me to be heard and to have a voice and to make an impact with people who align with my values. And what I've learned is that a big part of this is learning how to be vulnerable. And through these vulnerabilities, I've heard many stories, but the one that's inspired me the most over the years has been the origin story. And Stephen, you were there. So would you like to tell it?
Sure. Thank you, Yasmin. And so we learn I'm Jewish, we learn in the Old Testament and the New Testament, love thy neighbor as thyself. And in many religions have very similar. In Islam, you have similar teachings in Buddhism. And most of the religions out there have something very similar. But I always wondered, how do you love your neighbor if you don't know them? If you don't know them, you don't like them. If you don't like them, you don't love them. So back in 2009, I took my troop, my chapter, with our youth, by the way, always included our youth, to get to meet our neighbors. And we found a mosque, a synagogue, my synagogue, and a church that were all within a 1 mile radius of each other, neighbors. And first we went to the church with Father John Walsh on the extreme right, introducing us to Catholicism, and many of our members are Catholic. Then we went to the mosque. None of our members are Muslim, and it was my first time and our first time in a mosque. And we invited the top imam in Canada, Imam Delik on the extreme left, to talk about Islam and to lead the afternoon services. And then we went with the members of the mosque and the youth and our youth to my synagogue, where my rabbi in the middle, Rabbi Steinmetz, talked about Judaism. And then we had a moderator ask questions with Rabbi Peace and Imam, and he was asking some really tough questions. And when he got to the imam's answer was, I could start by talking about our differences, and I might never get to our similarities. Or I could start by talking about what our three religions have in common with each other. And maybe, just maybe, the difference could take care of themselves. We pray to the same God, the three of us. We believe in the same Holy Land. Abraham is our forefather, and we're related by blood. When we started talking about those commonalities, the tension in the room, which was really high, went way down. The three of them started joking with each other. And then we had a kosher, halal-friendly dinner with tables of 8 with members of each religion to get to know each other and discover those commonalities. Fathers and fathers, mothers and mothers, and the youth all sat together to discover how much they had in common. The night before, I had an email from the imam saying, we're going to be in the synagogue doing our evening prayers. What do we do? I didn't know if it would be allowed. But the rabbi wrote back the next morning and said, it's okay, we'll show them to the library. Things were going so well that he actually showed them to the main sanctuary. So he had 20 Muslim people doing their evening prayers facing a Torah in an Orthodox synagogue. Probably the only time that's happened. To finish the evening, we had people stand up around each table and hold hands while the rabbi, peace, and imam said a prayer for peace. I was holding Father John's hand and they were trembling. Looking around the room, there were tears in people's eyes. At that moment, we had love in the room. We went from not knowing our neighbor to love in 4 hours. So that event won what we call a Best Leadership Development Award in the world out of 2,000 others, and it's been duplicated every year since then. And then they asked me to chair the education program for Canada. They said, let me take the learning of that event a step further to action. And I want to do an event on conflict resolution because I was good at having conflict, not necessarily in resolving conflict. And I was introduced to Amir, who I mentioned earlier, and we did this event And that event also won the Best Leadership Award in the world. And people were resolving the toughest conflicts in their life using Nonflict without the other person they're in conflict with even being there 85% of the time. So then I said, okay, let me try it on a tougher audience. So I said, I was going to do it with our Palestine and Israel chapter in 2013. But 3 days before, I said, let me go to on the other side of the wall um, and meet with these activist women who I was introduced to in a refugee camp in Colombia. So we're around the table with 15 women, and this is the leader. And her first question to me is, you're from Canada. Your prime minister did not accept us as a state in the UN. What did the Palestinians do against Canadians? So everyone's right in a conflict. So the first thing I said was, you're right. Our prime minister did that. I'm not a politician. I'm a business person who travels around the world. And all that I and the people I meet know about you is what we hear about in the media. Would you be willing to share your true stories they could then share when I travel? So she said, okay. We went around the table and I took them through the questions of Nonflict, all through a translator. By the time we got to the last question, what could you do to overcome the obstacles that we could control or influence to achieve our ideal reality? She came and hugged my wife, Naomi, who you see here, and looked at me in the eye and said, thank you for being a friend to the Palestinians. We like what we learned, and we're going to use it with our husband. But more importantly, we're prepared to meet 15 Jewish Israeli women. And if you could get Obama, Netanyahu, and Abbas in a room, we mothers won't let them out of the room until there's a deal. So that's when I realized I had a gift to the world, Nonflict, that I needed to share. And I left my career in real estate to start and co-found Million Peacemakers. And that's 10 years ago.
Thank you so much for sharing that story with us, Stephen. It's really powerful to see how you can really change the course of a conversation and make a friend, make a peer, love thy neighbor just by focusing on your similarities, because in the end, it really is a choice. Um, so that is the beginning of of the last 10 years and what has brought us here today. And it goes to show, this like act of openness can have a big impact, like kind of like the butterfly effect. And again, I hope this like inspired you guys to see that, you can make this difference in your everyday lives starting now. So let's say, for example, every morning before you go to school, you have the same argument with your sister or your brother because they always take up too much time in the bathroom, and it's just not fun. It always like puts so much pressure on you in the morning, and it's just not a great start to your day. But what if one morning you had a different approach? What if you decided to approach her with kindness? This simple act doesn't just change the moment, but it changes the day, and it can actually inspire others. Sometimes you don't know when people look up to you. Like for me, I have a younger sister, and we actually have an 8-year difference. It's a pretty big difference. But growing up, I had learned that like kids, they don't do what you tell them, they imitate you. Like they learn from you and they do what you do. So sometimes, just changing your approach, it can inspire others and raise like future generation of peacemakers and leaders. Um, Another way, like another example in my daily life, me and my dad, we live together and we have a startup business. And, Stephen would know because, like, you were in a family business for a very long time, but it can be very difficult to work with your family, especially when, you're close and you're both attached to it, and you do want the best and make your dreams come true. But in the beginning of our business, we were constantly having conflict, and it was almost the same conflict again and again. But once we had both changed our approach, or sometimes made the other person feel heard, just feel respected, this is what had brought us, to the next couple of years, what brought us here today. And honestly, it does feel like making a dream come true. So sometimes just like a simple change in your approach can change everything in your life.
And I know you have shared earlier that you use Nonflict with friends and with great results as well. And
For sure. So, as scouts, you already know the importance of care, cooperation, respect. These are values that a peacemaker has, and they're not just values that are that you have, but they're key in resolving conflicts. Because when you think about it, giving someone the chance to just feel heard, um, and feel respected, they'll become much more receptive to finding solutions together and cooperating with you. And actually, during our workshops, this is something that we talk about all the time. Sometimes just giving someone the space to feel heard is enough to diffuse the conflict on its own.
Yeah, and you don't have to agree with someone to listen to them. Just showing them the respect. And by the way, feeling disrespected is the source of almost every conflict out there in our lives. And if you look at the geopolitical conflicts, it's often when leaders feel disrespected. That's how wars are started. So
Mm-hmm.
super number one, the number one value over there for Scouts.
So this is where Nonflict comes in. Like Stephen was saying, it's just 3 simple steps. It could fit on the back of a business card. And we're not going to go into too much detail because you guys are going to do the module yourself. But these are the steps, and they're designed for you to really understand the core of the conflict, where it's coming from, and how to respectfully co-create a solution with your partner. So now that you guys have an idea of what we've been talking about, and what Nonflict is, we're just going to play a little video that's going to show you what to expect in the online module.
Can you hear it? Up to you, Yasmin.
So as you guys can see, it's fun, it's interactive. There are videos, questions that you can do on your own. And, you can really do it as many times as you want. Like for me, I've hosted a lot of workshops where we've had people come multiple times, and I've also been to them again and again when I need a refresher in my life.
Great. And one of our other collaborations has been with Workbay, who helped create the video content, which is where we're hosting the workshop.
So here's the exciting part. Once you complete the module, you'll earn your peacemaking badge and a certificate. And these aren't just nice to have, but it's a representation of your commitment to learning, because it's easy. It's easy to have a conflict, but it takes strength to be vulnerable, to be open, and really, make the effort to co-create and make a change.
Great. And we'll share the link, and it's also on the Joda Jody website to take this. It'll be up for about a week. And we also have, after you take the course, ways of reinforcing it. We have a tool. If you have one of those A devices, ALEXA devices, you could say, Alexa, open the Nonflict Coach.
Okay, here's Nonflict Coach. Welcome to the Nonflict Coach. I can help you learn various concepts of the Nonflict way. I can guide you through the process, or you can continue where you left off.
Continue where I left off. Continue where I left off.
Yasmin, please look at Steve in the eyes and tell Steve your facts and feelings about the conflict. Steve, please actively listen to Yasmin without interrupting, and when Yasmin is finished, repeat back the essence of what was shared, asking, did I understand you well? Is there anything else? Repeat this until there is nothing else. Would you like to skip to the next step or pause the guide?
Alexa, exit. So at the beginning of the skill, it'll ask your name and your partner's name, and we had already done that. That's why I asked it to continue. and it'll walk you through the steps of Nonflict. So if someone didn't take the course, they could do it. And you say, I'd like to learn more, it'll actually take them through the course as well. The other thing we've created is a Peace GBT that speaks every single language out there that we could find. I was in Rwanda, it spoke in Rwanda. I was someone from Zimbabwe, it spoke their language, Malta, Maltese. So you could ask it any question. It's trained in Nonflict and any kind of conflict that you might be having, and you could talk to it or type it in, and it'll respond to you with the expertise of Nonflict, and it'll know the conflicts that you might be having. A tribal conflict in Zimbabwe, it'll be familiar with it. So it's really a very cool and powerful tool as well that we have for you.
So congrats, Scouts. You're all ready to become peacemakers now. All you need to do is take the module, earn your badge, and start making an impact in your community. If ever you guys have any questions, you need help, you can reach out. All the emails are on the right. That's Stephen, John, our executive director, and me at the end. And if you'd ever like to take a look at our website, see what workshops are coming up, or keep up with our socials, they're all there on the left.
So the key is going to be to practice it after you learn it, to practice it the same week with a real conflict that you're having. You'll have a link to the book and then share it with others. But what I'd like to do now is open this up to Q&A. So use the chat to please ask any questions you might be having about the course, about Nonflict. Be happy to answer them. And I noticed there was one question earlier, which was, what about religious conflict? What should I do in that conflict? And this is from Super Hope. Okay, and thanks for putting a link to the course. So we had talked about religious conflict, and that's the toughest one, which is identity-based conflict. And what we find is, again, in the 3 steps of Nonflict, is taking time to listen to each other. And step 1, where you ask people to share their facts and feelings around the conflict, and then what's important to them. And what we do in step 1 is to actively listen to them without disagreeing, without saying you're wrong. They're entitled to their facts and feelings, and one can't argue with that. And then you're going to mirror back the essence of what you heard, then ask, did I understand you well? And you don't have to agree with them to listen to them. But just by taking the time to listen to them, and this is with any conflict, is enough to diffuse most of them, because you're showing them respect. And then you'll have your opportunity to share your perspective as well. So whether be it religious conflict, and again, those are the ones I tested it out on first. I've had in my home here Palestinians, Israelis, Jordanians, and Syrians who started out hating each other from the beginning without even knowing each other, by going through our workshop, actually becoming brothers and sisters. Almost as stronger in some cases, brothers and sisters. So super powerful when we go through the process, and I've seen it with the toughest religious conflicts. I'm just going to stop sharing screen now and see if you have other questions. They're in the Q&A here. First question here.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to say, someone's asking, what's your inspiration for peacemaking?
Oh, good question. I would say it's youth. My inspiration has been youth. That's why we're focused on youth. Being a father of 4, as I mentioned, stepfather is 3. I see that conflict, if dealt with really well, can make a difference in their lives. And I felt the later we get in our life, the older we are, the more set in our ways we are. And the harder it is for us to change and learn new habits. But the younger you are, the easier it is. So that's why we're really focused on youth. I have hope for the future, knowing my kids and seeing my grandkids who even are 3 years old are dealing with conflict. Really, that's my inspiration. I want a better world for them. I want a world where we can live in peace, where we can have hope for the future. We can have clean air, clean water, and everyone just get along and make the world a better place for everyone. So you scouts are my inspiration. Because you are change makers. You don't have to wait till tomorrow to be leaders. And actually, One of the groups we're working with in India, our book is in Marathi, Maharashtra province, through another collaboration. They're using it in their schools and then choosing community conflicts to make a change in their communities after using it with their own lives in their classrooms. Okay, so question one, what if scouts all over the world would contribute to greening the world? Yeah, that would be amazing. So, Scouts, you're 57 million, I believe, around the world. You could choose the SDGs you want to focus on and use Nonflict as a way of resolving the conflict, which is what we saw, because there is conflict in achieving any of the SDGs. And yes, the world can be a better place. And research has shown that all you need is 3% to be an unstoppable force for peace. That's 250 million people roughly in the world. Scouts are 57 million, but you all know 4 people. So by definition, if you all got together to green the world, to make the world a more peaceful place, to work on all these SDG issues, you can be an unstoppable force. So that's really why we're so excited to be working together with you. You will get the code, code. Okay, we're going to get the code before we log off. How do we get the certificate and how could you do the module? The link to the module is both on JodoJT and on the chat. So if you look on the chat, it's in there as well, and we're going to be posting the code. Whom do you see as the best peacemakers until now? There's no best. Everyone's the best. Like, who's your favorite child? They're all my favorite. I'll give you. I'll share with you one story though from my home. Story about Adnan and Amit, because they're also part of my inspiration. Because we wanted to try this on real tough conflicts before we started Million Peacemakers. So I had them in my home. They were both doing their Masters of Social Work at McGill, along with another cohort from the Middle East. And when we went around the table to introduce themselves around the circle, they all sat in a circle. And Amit went first, and he said, "Hi, my name is Amit, and I'm a Jewish Israeli Zionist." And he just described himself. And then Adnan next to him said, "My name is Adnan. I'm from Syria, and I'm Muslim. And all I know about you, Zionists, Israelis, Jews, is you're the enemy not to be trusted." And Amit said, "Well, all I know about you is you're the enemy not to be trusted." And they hadn't met each other before, but they hated each other. And frankly, they wanted to do physical harm to each other. So we do an exercise in our workshop, which you're going to do on active listening, where you share an event or person that had a major impact in your life, including facts and feelings. So I paired up Adnan and Amit, and I watched them just to make sure things would be okay. So Amit shared that his person had a major impact in his life was his brother Tom. His older brother was 6 years older, and he said, "Tom had my back. I loved him more than anything in the world." And when all Israelis turned 18, they had to go to the army. And 2 years into his service, late one night, we had a knock on our door, and we're told Tom is dead. He died in a helicopter crash over Lebanon, along with 75 other Israelis. And he said, "The pain I felt in my heart then, I feel it every day. I would not want on my worst enemy." And you could tell Adnan was impacted, and he mirrored back what he heard. And then Adnan shared his story, which was, I was living in Dara when the nonviolent revolution against Assad started, and my older brother's a doctor. He was my hero. And young kids were arrested for anti-Assad graffiti, and they were being tortured in jail, and we protested to release our kids. And then the Assad forces started shooting into the audience. And I saw my brother tend to one of the wounded. But then I saw my brother shot in the head in front of me. The pain I felt then, I feel it every day. I would not want on my worst enemy. And the two of them at that point cried together. They hugged together and they became brothers. 5 minutes earlier, they were enemies. So people talking to each other, engaging in tough conflicts, they're my inspiration. such as Amit, whose families are close. They don't agree with each other politically. They don't have to, but they've humanized each other. They respect each other and they love each other, even though they don't agree with each other on everything. There's an error code in the Challenge Valley, so we're going to make sure that it works. Please, anyone could send the link for a certificate. I don't know if you're talking about the code, so we're going to share the code now. Are there any other questions? Did we miss any questions? Anyone else have anything else?
For everyone who's asking for the link, if you open the chat, actually you'll find it there. It's like
The
one
link
of the
for the
last three
course.
messages.
Yeah. Do you all see the link there? It has app learn. And thank you, Indonesian respect our motto, which is
Oh, sorry, I was answering that, which is unity and diversity. So thank you for sharing.
love that. Yeah. Um, that was one of the things in Rwanda, by the way, the government there, one way they brought people together. There was a genocide. 1 million Tutsis were killed in 100 days. How are they? Right now, they're one Rwanda. They can't talk about what tribe you are. They're not looking to divide each other. It's all about unity. Yes, they're diverse, yet everyone is different, yet to be unified on one global identity of being Rwandan has been very important in them moving forward to forgiveness. And we've incorporated forgiveness into Nonflict, by the way. So I learned from that the power of forgiveness. And step 3 of Nonflict is um, to co-create our ideal reality. And one of the questions is, what are the obstacles to achieve our ideal reality? And sometimes it is forgiveness. So we've learned from the power of the Rwandan people on how to forgive, and that's incorporated into Nonflict as well. So I think we are good to go. Janine, could we share the code for this as well? Okay, you see the challenge. So it is there now. The Challenge Valley code is Y3UOW. What could be our reactions when some are stopping for peacemaking? I'm not sure if I understand that question. What could be our reaction when some are stopping for peacemaking? Could you just clarify what you mean by that under anonymous attendee? Do you understand, Yasmin, what might be meant?
Um, I think maybe what might be meant is like what to do if someone doesn't want peace,
Okay,
maybe.
that's a great question. Yeah, sometimes people don't want to play ball. They don't want to engage with us, and you can't force someone to do that. But what I found is in the heat of the moment, by the way, isn't the time to engage. If you're just having a big fight, you want things to calm down and let them think about it. And you reflect too, what got triggered here? Why are we so emotional about this particular conflict? And then to engage with it.
Mhm.
And sometimes just to listen to them and mirror it back without trying to solve the problem, but just listening to them might then get them ready to deal with the conflict. But again, you can't force someone to engage in peacemaking.
Also, that
I'm
you can see in the module that there's certain ways to deal with conflict depending on the appropriate, situation. So like Stephen was saying, it's not always like the right idea to peacemake in the heat of the moment. Sometimes maybe it's best to fold and like step away and let things be like let things calm down until you're ready to engage again.
Yeah, and you get to choose. If it's an important relationship, you probably want to deal with it. But if it's a one-off relationship, you're not going to see them again. You might choose, okay, this isn't the time I want to get into conflict with them. But certainly it is effective as a different way of dealing with conflict for people that you want to deal with, be it friends, be it family members, be it people in your scout movement. And by the way, I use PeaceGBT to ask questions, and you could do this in your groups and your troops. What are some ways that we as troops can engage in conflict to make our world a better place? And what are some of the conflicts that we could deal with? And I looked up, let me just go into the Peace GBT, some of the conflicts that, for example, you could use Nonflict in your troops to deal with, which would be quite common. Peer pressure. Some of you might engage or be experienced with peer pressure or exclusion in cliques, sibling rivalry or family conflicts, cyberbullying or online conflicts, competition, jealousy, different opinions, beliefs, leadership and authority challenges, group responsibility and teamwork, when some people might not be pulling their weight, self-esteem and body language. These are just a few examples of ideas you could do as a troop to use Nonflict. And we are just winding down. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Yasmin, it was always great to work with you, to do a workshop with you.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Always happy to be here.
Thanks to the Scouts for inviting us today. Thanks to you all for making a difference to be peacemakers, and really look forward to keeping in touch and learning about all the change you are making in the world. Again, you all engage in peacemaking, you will make your world a better place now. You could be the heroes today. You don't have to wait till tomorrow to be peacemakers. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Steve and Yasmin. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jajani.
Bye.